أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا بني آدم قد أنزلنا عليكم لباسا يواري سوآتكم وريشا ولباس التقوى ذلك خير ذلك من آيات الله لعلهم يذكرون. In the previous verses, Allah Ta'ala mentioned in detail how Shaitan has deceived Hazrat Adam and Hazrat Hawa alayhim as-salatu was-salam. What was the consequence when they had eaten from the forbidden tree? That the clothes of Jannat were removed from them. And they started gathering the leaves now in Jannat to cover themselves. So continuing with that, Allah Ta'ala in this verse mentions that the clothing that you wear, what a great ni'mat, what a great bounty of Allah Ta'ala this is as well. So Allah Ta'ala says, Ya Bani Adam, O children of Adam. So every one of us are included in this address. Allah Ta'ala says, قَدْ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكُمْ لِبَاسَ يُوَارِي سَوْآتِكُمْ وَرِيشًا. That certainly we had given you clothing by which you will conceal your private parts, and we have given you clothing as adornment. Here Allah Ta'ala used the word anzalna. Anzalna we translating as Allah Ta'ala had given us. But anzalna actually means to descend. Meaning that when the rain is going to come down, then you will get your clothing. That's the means of your clothing. Because when the rain comes down, now grass is going to grow. The animal is going to eat the grass. And it is from that animal that you will get your wool, etc. and you will manufacture your clothing. So the actual means is from the top. So Allah Ta'ala says, we had given you the clothing, and what was the objective? Conceal your private parts and a means of adornment. وَلِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ. And the clothing of taqwa, that is best for you. So in this verse, there are three categories of clothing that have been mentioned. The first category is what we call libas al-zururat, the clothing which is of need and necessity of every person. And the need and necessity is that a person, his satar must be concealed, his private parts must be concealed. The second category of clothing is libas al-zinat, which Allah Ta'ala says, warisha. That not only do you cover yourself, but a person adorns himself. A person looks beautiful when he wears clothing. If a person has an operation, we find that there's a huge mark that is left. Particularly when it is cut. Where surgery was done, now there's a huge mark. But you just put beautiful clothing on top of that. And how beautiful doesn't a person look? So this is what we call libas zinat. And the third category Allah Ta'ala says, وَلِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى libas akhirat. That is the clothing of akhirat. The taqwa that a person has within him, that is the clothing of akhirat. Hazrat Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu ta'ala said, what is libasul taqwa? That a person, he does good deeds. That is libasul taqwa. And the second thing, he said, khawf khuda, to fear Allah Ta'ala every moment of our life. Is Allah Ta'ala happy with me, or is Allah Ta'ala unhappy with me? Some commentators of Quran have said, he said, libas taqwa, this is connected to the first two types of clothing. It is connected to libas zururat, the clothing of necessity, and libas zinat, the clothing of adornment. Taqwa is connected to that. How is it connected to that? That when a person, he wears beautiful clothing, many a times pride comes into a person. Look how I am looking. So Shariat doesn't allow a person to have pride. A person must have humbleness. At that time, make shukr to Allah Ta'ala. Don't let that pride enter your heart. The second way that libas taqwa, it is connected to libas zururat and beauty, is that many a times a female particularly, that she wears such clothing that is tight fitting. That although she is covered, her body is covered, but her body is exposed at the same time, because you can see the shape of the body. So a female is supposed to be wearing such clothing that is absolutely loose, that you cannot even see the shape of the body of a female. Or for example, if she is wearing clothes, many a times the head is left open and she is walking without a scarf. Or if the head is covered, she thinks that is sufficient and the face is left open. No, the entire body of a female must be covered. The third meaning that has been given to this, that is particularly is very, very common in this day and age. Many men, they start dressing like women. They're wearing the clothing that women are supposed to be wearing. And women are wearing clothing that men are supposed to be wearing. So Allah Ta'ala says, وَلِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى, that wear clothing of taqwa, that fear Allah Ta'ala. And the fourth meaning of this is that don't be extravagant in purchasing your clothing. That don't go exceed the bound. Don't over exceed the bound and buy expensive clothing. Today you can get a techie maybe, for example, for 200-300 rand. But a child, he wants wants a chaki that is 1,000 rand. Why? Because it just has that one name on it. So I must buy that type of a chaki. Or there's a jacket. You can buy the jacket for 500 rand. But the child wants a jacket that's 2,000 rand. Why? It's a branded name. So that is not what is important. Allah Ta'ala says, وَلِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى, that don't be over extravagant, don't overspend on clothing also. ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ, that is best for you. ذَلِكَ مِنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ. This is from the verses of Allah, the signs of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that this clothing is such a great ni'mah. Think a little bit of this clothing that Allah Ta'ala has given you. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ. Perhaps people will take heed of this great ni'mah of Allah. We'll continue.